All right, good afternoon, EWI members. We are thrilled to have our LCAM 2020 keynote speaker, Jill Christensen, with us today. So welcome, Jill.
Thank you.
We are recording today's presentation. So for those who are on the call and are watching, please share this with all of your chapter members after the call and the recording's been posted. We want to make sure everybody gets a chance to hear from Jill because this topic is so relevant and prevalent in today's workforce with what employers are dealing with. And we want to share all of this knowledge from Jill with everyone in our membership. So please forward it on. We will be recording this and we'll post it in my EWI as soon as the recording is done processing. I'm going to share with you a little bit about Jill. We're so thrilled to have her as our keynote at LCAM this year in Corpus Christi. She is a former Fortune 500 corporate communications business executive with a Six Sigma green belt. Jill understands how organizations operate and what they need to do differently to attract, retain, and engage employees. Her first book, If Not You, Who? Cracking the Code of Employee Disengagement, is a global bestseller, and her popular weekly blog was named a top 100 corporate blog alongside of Apple and Microsoft. A top 200 global thought leader to watch, Jill's second book, Remote 101, The Secret to Engaging Virtual Workers, debuted in October 2021. So with that, straight from Colorado, Jill Christensen.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I'm so excited to be here. So let's do this. This is such an important topic. And why? Because thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, work as we know it has changed forever. And, you know, many times in life, when a major change occurs, it means that we must reinvent ourselves, not only in order to survive, but to thrive. And if any of you have ever seen me speak or read any of my books, you know that I think that surviving is not the name of the game. Surviving is in the basement. I want every single one of you to thrive as an individual in your career and in your personal lives. And also your organizations should be thriving. So how is today's session going to help you? That it's incredibly simple. So I'm going to show you how you as leaders, as an employees, and as managers can manage remote workers effectively so those employees show up every single day and give you the best version of themselves. And so why is it so important that managers are a part of this equation? Because when we ask the American population, who do you have the most interaction with on a daily basis? 76% say my immediate supervisor. And you've probably also heard the moniker that people do not leave organizations, they leave managers. And so employees tell us the environment that I'm being asked to do my job in and the person who is giving me direction, motivation, inspiration has a major bearing on whether or not I'm going to show up each day and give you, organization, the shirt off my back, or just go through the motions and do what I have to do to get by. And why is knowing how to engage remote workers such an important topic? First, it's incredibly important because, again, hybrid work is here to stay. We are never going to go back to an environment anywhere in the world where the vast majority of employees come to work and have a physical presence day after day. The smartest organizations in the world understand that in order to attract and retain excellent talent, you have to give people options. You have to be flexible. Because if you think about it, we just finished one of the greatest social experiments of all time, right? Billions of people overnight went home and worked. And guess what? It was successful. To the dismay, in my opinion, of leaders and supervisors. I'm sure there were millions of leaders and supervisors who thought this is never going to work. It's going to fail. But the truth of the matter is it did work and employees know that it worked. And so they are always going to be wanting a hybrid work environment. And so again, it's critical that you understand how to engage those people who are working remotely because most organizations will always have remote workers going forward in some form or another. And additionally, this is an incredibly important topic because employee engagement is absolutely everything. We have reams of data that show us that engaged workers provide a better quality product, bring about better customer satisfaction scores. They steal less, they stay longer, they make fewer mistakes, they're absent less, they provide, again, more ideas and are much more creative than your disengaged employees. They also recommend your organization as a great place to work to their family and friends. So your engaged employees actually serve as amazing brand ambassadors for your organization. But even though we have all of this powerful data about the importance of having engaged workers, the vast majority of organizations are failing. Currently in America, the latest statistic is that only 32% of American workers say that they are engaged. When we leave the United States, the number tumbles even further. Only 20% of global employees say that they are engaged. And as I said a moment ago, we have conducted a ton of research, not only about why it's so important to have engaged workers, but also about what exactly happened when these billions of people went remote for 2 years during the COVID pandemic. And believe it or not, we have found out that remote workers are as productive at home or even more productive at home as they are in a physical office setting. However, the problem lies in that they tell us that they feel completely disconnected. So because they are not physically co-located with their supervisor, with their peers in either an office setting or a retail setting or a fast food setting, whatever your business, however your business operates, we completely did not think about the fact that when we sent everyone home to work, they were going to lose the sense of connection that is so critical for employees to feel in order to feel engaged. And again, that's something that we had no control over. People had to go home, but that's the reality of people working from home. They're incredibly productive. They can be engaged at home, but this deep sense of connection that they felt when they sat with their coworkers is missing, and it's gone. And it's absolutely having a bearing on how engaged your remote workers feel. And so what you're going to leave here with today is that when you understand this one thing, how to effectively manage your remote workers is going to make a ton of sense. And there it is on the slide. Bottom line, you have to create an environment where your remote workers' needs are met if you want them to give you the shirt off their back. So I want you to really let that sink in. So what I'm saying is, if a worker thinks that you're making them a priority, they're going to make you a priority and give you, your organization, their all. And the same thing is true on the flip side. If a worker's needs are not being met, their loyalty is going to drop, they're going to disengage, disconnect, and be less productive than if they were engaged. Because let's face it, there is so much going on in our world and in our environments right now. When you have employees who are sitting at home and they're remote, they could be focusing on the recession and the economy. They could be focusing on the mass shootings in America. They could be focusing on the war in Ukraine, right? They could be focusing on the plummeting stock market. There are a lot of things that could grab your employees' attention and distract them so that they are not as productive at work, right? So we know, because they tell us, if I do not feel important, embraced, supported, and connected, you risk me checking out. Remote workers are telling us this. And so that's the good news in this story. We don't have to throw spaghetti against a wall and say, well, we hope this remote worker strategy sticks. We have spoken to so many remote workers in the past few years, and we're talking about Gartner and Gallup and all of the major research organizations have been in constant contact with employees asking, how is this landing on you? What's working? What's not working? What needs do you have? What needs are being met? What needs are not being met? And so we have all the data in the world that tells us what those remote workers are saying, which makes it that much easier to come up with a strategy to combat remote worker disengagement. And I know that some of you might be thinking that, because organizations, some of them have not really turned around, right? They're still furloughing and laying off workers, especially now that a recession is potentially afoot. And so you might be thinking, well, you know what? My employees are just going to be on their best behavior. They have had enough change in the past 2 years. They're not going to rock the boat. They're just going to stay put because, again, so many things in our world are up in the air. People are just going to accept the culture in which you are giving them. However, I want to share some really interesting data with you. These organizations are hiring in droves, and not just for manual worker positions. When you bring on tens or hundreds of thousands of new employees, you must also bring on white collar managers, leaders, corporate center employees, and administrative assistants to support these people. But wait, there's even more. These amazing organizations are hiring in mass too. They just didn't divulge the numbers to the press. But I can assure you that of this list of 40 organizations, many are in the top 10th percentile of employee engagement. And so we're talking about the fact that in America, the average employee engagement score in a company is at 32%. When you're in the top 10th percentile of employee engagement, it means that 90% of your employees say that you have an amazing workplace culture. There are many organizations on this list with great cultures where they put their people first, so their people can put their customers first. So customers have an extraordinary experience and their customers keep coming back to you for more. Cha-ching, 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 all the way to the bank. And so the takeaway is that now is not the time to rest on your laurels and think that employees are just going to stay put in a crappy, dysfunctional workplace culture because of COVID-19 or because of the recession or because they're tired of all of the change. Regardless of what is going on in the world, if an employee's needs are not being met, they are telling us that I will leave you. They are telling us that we're no longer going to put up with this. It's a part of the reason why the Great Resignation is underway. Besides the fact that people's priorities have changed during COVID-19, we've got a lot of people who left the workforce, like moms, who can't yet go back because of childcare issues. We've got a lot of people who left the workforce who were later in their career and they thought they were going to go back, but they've now realized, you want to know what? I like this. I'm going to retire early, or I'm going to go back to the workplace, but not into the role or a company that I was in. I'm going to take a part-time job. You also have a lot of people who have reprioritized their lives and they've realized, I have worked in a crappy dysfunctional culture for far too long, and I am no longer going to put up with it. That my happiness matters. I don't know, and I'm not being morbid here, but you never know when your time is going to come. And so I'm no longer going to put up with a work environment that doesn't meet our needs. And so we're going to dive into how you can stop this from happening, because again, we've got all of these organizations who are out there trying to take your talent, who are hiring in mass, hiring in droves. But we know, and employees tell us this, I will not leave an organization that meets my needs. And so when you create an extraordinary workplace culture, an employee feels like you are making them a priority and they are being paid at least relative to local market, right? They're not being underpaid. Those employees are absolutely going nowhere. And so your role, your job is to create that environment. And so your remote workers feel like they're a priority, their needs are being met. And then when you do that, mark my words, they're going to stay and give you their all. And so when we talk to remote workers, here are the 3 areas that they say have completely fallen off the map, fallen off the radar, thanks to COVID-19. Remote workers are saying, when I am not physically in a workspace with my colleagues, I feel a loss of connection, communication, and collaboration. And so I know that some of you might be thinking, okay, Jill, well, this is research, right? That's coming out of, Gallup and Connexa and Watson Wyatt and all of these big research firms, but I don't believe that all remote workers have these 3 needs, since people are different. But needless to say, I've had to conduct a lot of research to write both of my books. And what I've learned through that research, and also through my 35 years in the business world, is that people are not different. Every single one of your employees is a human being, and human beings are innately wired similarly. What engages and inspires me engages and inspires you. What deflates and demotivates you deflates and demotivates me. It does not matter what industry somebody works in, what country they operate in, or what generation they were born into. People are similar. And I'm going to share some information with you to back that up, because here's a thing that I see organizations do that is a mistake. Employee engagement is possible, right? You can create an amazing workplace culture. The easiest way to go about that is to have one strategy that you execute with all of your employees. I have organizations come to me and say, Jill, everyone's different. So I need to have an engagement strategy for my millennials. And I need to have an engagement strategy for the people in IT. And I need to have an engagement strategy that's different for the people in France than the one that's for the people in Canada. And I highly recommend that you do not do that. Why? Because the vast majority of employees around the globe say, when I work remotely, here are the 3 things that are missing. So rather than slicing and dicing your employee engagement strategy and creating 10 of them and making a ton more work for yourself and making this more difficult than it has to be, go to the lowest common denominator. Let's go to what the vast majority of people are telling us are missing, and let's go after that. Promise me when I tell you, if you approach it that way, your employee engagement journey will be much simpler, yet you will still succeed in droves. And so here's some evidence to back up the fact that most people are similar. So as all of you know, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a psychology theory that was proposed approximately 80 years ago. And yeah, I fudged it a little bit, right? But I think we would all agree that when you're working from home, if you don't have a good Wi-Fi connection, like that's a need, right? You need a good Wi-Fi connection in order to be productive at home. So I fudged his hierarchy and I stuck that in there. I think he'd like it personally. So getting back to his hierarchy. So basically he created a system which reflects the universal needs of society at its base. And then it proceeds up to the top red box to more acquired emotions, right? So basically Maslow says approximately only 5% of people in their lifetime will ever make it up into that red box. And that red box is sort of like you have discovered your purpose in life. You are doing a job that uses all of your talents and that enables you to be creative, that in all areas of your life, you are fulfilled, right? And so this is like, you know, Buddha's sitting on the top of a mountain thing, right? It's that you are incredibly aware and connected and attached. It's that you listen to your gut, right? It's that really that all knowing. That's supposedly the goal for all employees in our lifetime. But when you look at the bottom, right? Food, water, shelter, freedom from fear, you know, having friends and, you know, a partner, feeling respected, feeling self-esteem, right? Those are the things that most people are trying to achieve. So you can see we all really do have similar needs. Maslow didn't say, here's the hierarchy for people in finance, or here's the hierarchy for people who work in Belgium, or here's the hierarchy for millennials or Gen Zs, right? Maslow said, this is the hierarchy for everybody, because everybody has the same physiological, safety, social, and esteem needs. And when these needs are met, self-actualization can actually occur. And so unless you disagree with Maslow, I hope that we are more closely on the same page, that people really do have similar needs. What differs are people's values, okay? And I can tell you that firsthand because I grew up in the New York business environment. And I can tell you that from my experience in New York, they value money, being at the top of the ladder, like from a title standpoint, driving a nice car, getting an excellent education and going to a really good college. And they also many times value family. They're very close family connections there. I now live in Denver, Colorado. Do you know what they value here? Exercise, eating healthy, being outside, being nice to one another, right? It's completely different. So the values are different in those two cities in America, but we all have the same needs. And so now we're going to dive into the three areas that employees, remote workers, I should say they need, because when you get this right, your remote workers are going to be able to run on all cylinders and be as productive as possible. So, truth number one, the number one thing that remote workers are telling us is missing connection. And so, when we ask employees, why do you get out of bed and go to work every day? 80% say, I want to feel connected to something bigger than myself. I want to add meaning. I want to add value. I want to make a difference. And I'm sure that this is resonating with most of you as well, because I know for myself, feeling that sense of connection is incredibly important. Well, it's no secret that when you physically disperse people, their sense of connection diminishes. So I remember during the first stages of COVID-19, the vast majority of my family and friends just came to me on an ad hoc basis and said, I cannot believe how disconnected I feel from my manager, my coworkers, my business, right? Because here's what's going on. Pre-COVID, we all took this for granted. Nobody walked into a shared office space, right? Or a shared restaurant space or wherever it is you work and said, wow, my sense of connection is being met because I'm physically around my coworkers. None of us thought that, but the truth of the matter is that's exactly what was happening. And so with COVID-19, we've lost that, right? And why is this sense of connection so important? Well, it's incredibly important because the definition of an engaged employee is somebody who trusts leaders and feels an emotional connection to the organization. And so for all intensive purposes, you cannot have an engaged employee unless they feel that sense of connection. And so how do we make this happen in our organizations? This. So let me describe to you how the rest of this webinar is going to unfold. So as you know, there are three areas that remote workers say have really fallen off the radar now that they're remote, right? They have needs that are going unmet. So what I'm going to do is share with you 7 ideas in each of the 3 areas as to things that you can do in your work environment to drive a sense of connection, to drive a sense of communication, and to drive a sense of collaboration. And I'm not saying that you need to execute on all of these. What I want you to do as an organization is to pick and choose the ones that you think will work best, right? Because all organizations are different. And I also want you to know that you don't have to take copious notes, because at the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you a URL, and that URL is going to link to a 1-pager. It's a 1-page PDF document that is going to list the 21 manager or even leader action items that you can use in your organizations. And it's not just going to list 2 words like you see here. It's going to list an entire sentence. And so you understand exactly what that would look like if you were to do that in your organization. And so in each of the 3 areas, I'm going to focus on 2 actions that I believe are incredibly powerful. But again, when you go back to your organization, pick the ones that you believe will be most successful for the employees and for your organization. And so the first thing that we're going to focus on is the team goal. And so one of the easiest ways to help a person feel a deep sense of connection is if every single employee on the team is going after one goal together. And it's really powerful when the goal that you write is in support of your CEO or your president's goals. Why? Because if you create a team goal that is aligned to the vision of your CEO, to the purpose of your organization, to the mission of why your organization exists, people are really going to feel like they're walking forward together toward the same North Star. They're going to know that they're going after something that is much bigger than themselves, that is much bigger than any of their individual objectives, and that will drive a deep sense of connection. Because it's not just a goal that one person is going after, it's a goal that the team is responsible for going after together. So besides the fact that people are going to have to communicate with one another and collaborate with one another to reach the goal, employees say to us, when I am working toward something with a team of people, it causes me to feel connected to something bigger than myself. And we have an amazing story in America's history that points to a team goal beautifully. So, as many of you know, in the early 1960s, our former President Kennedy had a mission that America would be the first country to set foot on the moon. And so Kennedy traveled to the NASA space station in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and he wanted to see the rocket ship being built and meet with the leadership team. And when he was there, he was walking through the hallways and he came across a NASA employee who happened to be a janitor. And Kennedy said to this janitor, "So what do you do here?" And the janitor replied, "I help put men on the moon." The janitor didn't say, "I help clean toilets." The janitor said, "I help put men on the moon." And why did the janitor reply to Kennedy at that way at that point in time? He did so because NASA's leadership team got it. They understood the importance of creating a mission, a vision, a goal that every single employee rallied around. And it caused this employee to feel connected and to feel loyal and to feel proud and to be engaged, right? And that's what you can do with a team goal. It is a powerful thing that brings people together who are not co-located, okay? The next thing I want to talk about is something that we call the troop tour. So in the troop tour, that's where your remote workers would lead a tour of their virtual workspace. Okay, so in the troop tour, you're going to have your employees on the team either use the camera on their iPhone or their smartphone or the camera on their computer, and they're basically going to move it around and give people a tour of their workspace. And what you're also going to ask them to do in this is like a show and tell. You're going to ask each employee to pick up something in their individual workspace that is meaningful to them and explain why it has meaning to them. It might be an award that they won at work. It might be a memento that they picked up from a vacation. It might be a picture of their children, right? On somewhere doing something fun. And the reason why the troop tour holds so much power is because employees tell us, when I know my coworkers on both a work level and a personal level, it causes me to feel more connected to them. And so this is about you putting things in place that enable your coworkers to get to learn more about each other, but not just from a work standpoint, from a personal standpoint. And when you've got somebody that is literally using their camera to show you around their new home office and to pick something up on their desk that is meaningful to them, that is absolutely enabling your employees to get a deeper bird's eye view into their coworkers. And, for instance, I might pick up a soccer ball and say, I went to the World Cup and I absolutely love soccer. And then somebody else on the team might be like, wow, I love soccer. And then that, again, it's a point of interest. It's a point for conversation. It's a point for connection. Okay. So there are 5 other ideas that you can read about in the PDF, but I believe that the troop tour and the team goal are incredibly powerful things that you can do to create connection. Also, I want to point out one thing. If you think that you have employees who might not be proud of their new remote workspace, you can just give them the option to just do show and tell. So they could put an ocean scene behind them, and all they need to do then is pick up something in their area that they chose to put in their new remote workspace because it has meaning to them, right? So we would still get to the same end point where your other employees will get to know this employee on a personal level, but they won't have to potentially go through what they consider to be embarrassment because they're, working out of a corner of a spare bedroom or, whatever that looks like for someone. Okay. So that's an option that you can give people so that you don't set people up to feel less than. Okay. Let's go on to the second one, communication. So Here's the deal. Right now in America, 50% of American workers are millennials and Gen Zs. By the end of 2025, 3.5 short years from now, 75% of millennials will be, 75% of American workers will be millennials and Gen Zs. Gen Zs are the generation coming up behind the millennials. You guys, these generations of people were born with a smartphone in their hand when they came out of their mom in the hospital. Like seriously, they bombard people with communication and they love to be bombarded with communication. It's the only thing they know. They grew up with a smartphone. They're in the world of social media. It is said that the average millennial or Gen Z sends and receives 1,500 text messages a week. And then they're going to go into your organization and communication is going to be lacking. It's absolutely not going to cut it. And also, employees tell us, when I feel like my voice is being heard and I can speak up at work, I feel a sense of connection. I feel a sense of communication. I feel like that I am being respected. And all of those things drive massive levels of employee engagement. Also, why would you not want to seek out the hopes, dreams, ideas, and wishes of your employees? Besides the fact that employees tell us, when I have a voice at work and my voice is heard, I'm more engaged. We also know that your employees are closest to your customers. They've got amazing ideas about how to improve your organization, but they're not going to just share those ideas with you. You're going to have to put programs in place for people to be able to communicate, because it's still not human nature for people to speak up. So, what are the things that you can do specifically with your remote workers to ensure that the lines of communication are open and flowing? Here are 7 ideas that I have for you. And the 2 that I'm going to focus on today are the team huddle and focus groups. So in the team huddle, that's where your managers and leaders would lead either a daily, many times it's done daily, or a weekly team huddle. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Think of football, right? Where the team huddles together, everyone comes together for like 5 to 10 minutes, and you communicate, you talk about what's going on. You can have this huddle in the AM, you can have it in the PM. And it's really important that you make it available to all team members, but you don't tell people that it's mandatory. People cannot stand when something is mandatory because they feel like they're being told what to do. And so you set up this team huddle and then you make it available to people so that they can, join in. You might have some people who are there live. You might have other people who are on Microsoft Teams or Zoom, right? But you all huddle together and you talk, you communicate, you have a conversation, you have a discussion. So if you're going to have a morning team huddle, that is a great opportunity for the manager to share with employees a corporate announcement, right? Or something that they are privy to that has not yet been communicated with all employees, because then it gives all of the team members an opportunity to engage in a dialogue about the change or about the team announcement. And if you're going to have a group huddle in the evening, that is an amazing time for you to ask all of your employees who wants to share something that they did today that they feel like was an accomplishment, right? Something that they're proud of. Because then you're allowing all people to speak up. You're ending the day on a positive note, right? It will give all of the other team members the opportunity to recognize this person. And so you're really ending things just in a really, on a high note, right? In a really good way. And so it's really important for you to remember that gone are the days where leaders and managers can just push content and information to employees. In order for you to keep your remote workers engaged and upbeat and inspired and motivated, they have to feel like you are communicating with them, right? A dialogue, a conversation, a two-way street. Because employees tell us when information is just pushed out to me and I don't have a say, I don't have a voice, it causes me to disengage. And again, keep remembering, why wouldn't you want to? Your employees know what is going on in your organization. They know what processes are broken and need to be fixed. They know what's working well and should be replicated. They know what your customers think. They know they probably have great ideas for new products and services, right? They know a lot, but you've got to give them these opportunities to speak up and to chime in. And I'm not saying that every single idea or decision needs to be run past your employees, because if you do that, you'll never get anything done, right? But there absolutely, I believe, are more opportunities than you're probably taking advantage of to seek out your employees' opinions, to engage in dialogues, to engage in conversations where you're not just pushing information out to them, but you're including people in the conversation, where you're creating that two-way dialogue. Because here's the deal. Here's another thing that we took for granted. When we were all physically co-located, you would just hear stuff, right? Meaning you'd be walking down the hallway and you'd hear something. You'd be in a kitchenette or break room. You'd hear something. You'd stay in a meeting room after the meeting ended and employees would start talking. You'd go to the cafeteria and have lunch with someone and you learn stuff, right? There was a huge amount of ad hoc communication that goes on in hallways and break rooms and kitchens. Well, for your remote workers, that's gone. So they're no longer just picking up on stuff and hearing things secondhand or ad hoc or in the hallways. And that's one of the reasons why communication has absolutely plummeted. Because unless somebody deliberately communicates with them now, they're not going to be in the know. Okay. So this is one of the reasons why communication landed on the list of top 3 needs. And so I just talked to you about the team huddle, and I want to share another idea with you that is incredibly powerful. And it's focus groups. So a focus group is when you bring together like 8 to 15 employees and you ask for their opinion about a decision that has not yet been made. And that is critical, because if you keep making decisions all the time without the input of your employees, they're going to think they don't have a voice. They're going to think their voice isn't heard. They're going to think that information is just pushed out to them, and they're going to disengage. They're not going to feel connected. And like that, and like the flow of communication is happening. So in a focus group, you bring people together and you say to them, for instance, we may change our benefits plan in 2023. So we want to know what you think, employees. What do you like about our current provider? What do you dislike? What benefits do we offer that you don't use? What benefits do we not offer that you would like to see us provide? Okay. Gather feedback, because then when you announce who your benefits provider is for 2023, you've got 2 options. One is we conducted an RFP and we picked a new benefits provider for 2023, and here they are. That's option number 1. Option number 2, employees, you spoke, we listened. We conducted focus groups where we gave you the opportunity to chime in about our new benefits provider. Here's the new benefits provider that we selected, and this is why we selected that new benefits provider. And you guys, the why is critical. So many leaders and managers and employees even leave out the why. Employees are much more reasonable than you'd think. You might be thinking, well, Jill, if we conduct focus groups and people are going to expect us to execute on every single thing they said in a focus group, they're not. They understand that you can't execute on every single employee idea. What they're not going to understand is why you didn't ask for their opinion in the first place. Okay. So focus groups enable you to bring people together and communicate their needs, their desires, their ideas, what they would change, what they would keep the same, right? And then when you communicate the why, as long as it's reasonable, your employees are going to embrace the decision. Again, what they're not going to embrace is you going into a conference room and making decisions that impact them over and over and over again without anybody asking what they think, because then they feel like that sense of communication is missing. They feel like they don't have a voice and they feel like their voice is not being heard. Okay, so now let's move on to the third C. Remote workers are telling us in droves that because I'm no longer physically co-located, I'm not collaborating with anyone, right? Because think about it. Again, we took this for granted. If you were physically co-located with your coworkers and you were making a decision, or you were drafting an email, or you were writing a project plan, you could easily say, hey, Jane, could you come over here and look at this? Could you give me your input on that? It's really easy to collaborate when you're physically co-located. When you're not, you really have to make an effort, right, to reach out to and connect with and partner with your colleagues, your manager. And I'm sure this is even more different now, like cross-functionally. Like if you're going to leave your business unit or your division or your line of business, cross-functional communication, collaboration was always light pre-COVID. Now it's probably non-existent, right? And so people are telling us that I want to come together with my colleagues, and get their input as I'm working on my stuff. And they're telling us that it's a critical need of their when they are remote. And another thing that employees are telling us is that when they collaborate, it enables them to learn from one another. It enables them to be in greater communication with their coworkers, and that these things boost their morale, their knowledge, their productivity, and their engagement. So it's critical that we boost collaboration with our remote workers. How can you do that? Here are 7 proven ideas that you can use to increase collaboration on your team. And the 2 that I want to highlight are delegate to everyone and rewarding collaboration. And so let's start with delegating to everyone. So there's a phenomenon that happens in the workplace where employees who sit near the manager, or employees who are the high performers year over year, are the people who are always tapped to lead the high profile projects and to solve the high profile problems. And there is a term for this. It's called the halo effect. It's where the same people have a halo, like an angel, over their head, and they are chosen over and over and over again. My guess is you may have experienced this when you were younger in physical education or PE or gym class in school, right? The gym teacher would choose the same people all the time to be the team captains. The team captains would choose the same people all the time to be on their team, right? The people who were chosen last were like always the people who were chosen last. That's the halo effect. And if you think about how toxic that was when you were younger in gym class or PE class, it's equally as toxic in the workplace. When the same people are chosen over and over and over again to lead projects, to solve problems, etc., it causes all of the other employees who are not selected to feel deflated, to disengage, and to be less productive. Managers and leaders must trust remote workers to lead the critical high-profile projects. They've got to spread the wealth around and not select the same employees over and over and over again. And if a manager's response to that is, well, I don't have people on my team, meaning all my team members aren't capable of leading a high-profile project or solving a high-profile problem, then I would ask that manager, then why hasn't that employee been put on a performance improvement plan? Why haven't you worked with that employee to develop them, to grow them, to help try to build them into the employee that they need to be so that they are adding value and successful in your organization, right? And I'm a firm believer in this. If you put somebody on a performance improvement plan and they fail their performance improvement plan, in my opinion, those employees absolutely need to be terminated. They don't need to be moved from sales into marketing or from the front desk into IT. They need to leave your organization, because in order for you to have an extraordinary workplace culture where people feel a sense of communication and connection and collaboration, and they feel like the environment is meeting their needs, you need to make sure you've got the right person in every chair, and that every single one of your employees is earning their chair each and every day. It is critical. And so that's delegate to everyone. Your managers have to have people on their team who they trust, and your managers have to spread the wealth around. Okay. Second, recognition. So a workplace truism, you get what you reward. Employees who collaborate with one another effectively should be held up as role models and be rewarded for collaborating. We all know that if you want to maximize business results, people have got to seek out multiple perspectives and partner. So collaboration needs to be rewarded, because here's the deal. We know in organizations that when your employees see people getting rewarded for certain behaviors, what do? They think, I want to get rewarded. So what is Jane being rewarded for? Oh, she's being rewarded for collaborating. So I should collaborate, right? Now, that might seem like an odd way to get to collaboration, but you can use recognition as like something that, I'm not going to say you dangle, but people need recognition. People want recognition. And so if you reward collaboration, more people are going to collaborate because they too want to be rewarded. They too want to be held up as a role model. And, years ago, I may have thought, well, that's not effective. People should just know to collaborate and collaborate. But what I've learned in my business career is that any way you can get something to do what you need them to do is fine, right? No small animals or children are being hurt, right? We know reward people for a certain behavior and they'll do more of it, and that people will look at that and do more of it. So if that's how we've got to get to collaboration in a remote work environment, I'm fine with it. What matters is that collaboration increases. What doesn't matter is how you get to that point. So when we first started out, I said to you, it's incredibly important that you approach this strategically, right? This is a strategic approach to engaging remote workers. And so how does all of this come together in your day-to-day world? Bottom line, this content really needs to be brought back to your organization and put into the hands of your managers and even your leaders, so that your managers can execute on the action items. Why? Because as I said earlier, employees tell us how my manager leads me has a major bearing on whether or not I'm engaged, has a major bearing on whether or not I feel like my needs are met. And so when you bring this content back to your managers, and there, the second bullet is the PDF action item list. It's a one-pager. When you bring that back to your managers and let your managers know, we know that some of you might be struggling with engaging your remote workers because this is new. We've never had to do this in the past. Well, we have 21 proven ideas that you can use to engage the remote workers on your team. Oh, and managers, we don't expect you to execute on all the 21 ideas. We want you to look at the list and then pick and choose the ideas from the list that you believe would be most effective with the people on your team. Okay. So this is really about you unleashing your managers. It's really about you giving your managers tools and resources that they can use to re-engage their remote workers. Because you guys, we can't expect managers and leaders to know what to do. We are all in new territory here. We have a ton of information from remote workers from the past 2 years. So we know what they need. They're telling us what we need. So it makes sense that if we execute on those action items that meet people's needs, we're going to combat remote worker disengagement. And another thing that I highly recommend is that you measure your success and that you course correct as necessary. And so, as you all know, the average American company in America is at 32% employee engagement. In order for you to know where your organization is, you would need to conduct an employee engagement survey. That will give you baseline data as to what percentage of our employees are engaged versus disengaged. And I'm sure there are some of you on the call who already have an employee engagement survey, so you know the data. And so in terms of measurement, there are 2 ways that you can measure the engagement levels of your remote workers. First, if you already have an employee engagement survey in your organization, you could add one question to the survey that asks a person, do you work remote or do you come to the workplace? Because then you could slice and dice your employee engagement survey data only on those employees who say they work remote. So you could come up with an employee engagement score for your remote worker population. If you don't have an employee engagement survey, here's how you can track whether or not your remote workers are engaged. Once a week or once a month, it's completely up to you. You can ask your remote workers one question. I would recommend this company as a great place to work. If people say yes, they're engaged. If people say no, for the most part, they're disengaged. That will enable you to keep your finger on the pulse in real time of how your remote workers are feeling about your organization, about your culture, and how they're being led. And then it's critical that you circle back with managers and leaders and you share the survey results. You let them know what progress is being made, and you also course correct if things are not improving and getting better. Because trust me when I tell you this, I have partnered with tons of organizations in my lifetime to help build a better workplace culture. If your managers are in the trenches executing on the action items, your employee engagement score is going to increase with your remote workers. I can promise you that. And if your managers are not executing on the ideas, your employee engagement score is either going to stay stagnant or it's going to decrease. So it's critical that you not just share the ideas with your managers, but that you also measure your success and course correct if you find that things are not going in directionally correct, right? If your numbers are not increasingly getting higher. And so we've covered a ton of ground today, but I would love to continue supporting you in your journey. As you know, I'm your keynote speaker in September in Corpus Christi. We're going to talk about a similar topic, employee engagement, not remote worker engagement. And I'm so excited to be joining you there. But between now and then, I published a book in the fall of 2021. That book is here. It speaks to these three areas that remote workers tell us are critical. And it also speaks to an additional area that has come to light in the past 6 months as to another thing that remote workers feel are missing. And so what I want to offer you today is my Remote 101 book, and you only have to pay shipping and handling. So if you're interested in getting this book, the URL is there. Courtney, I don't know if you can copy that URL and put it in the chat box, but if you can, it would make it easier for people to take advantage of this offer. Because again, I want to continue helping you in this space because it is so critical. And then finally, there's something that I really hope sticks with you today. If you guys are not deliberate, right, like really deliberate about creating an amazing workplace culture for your remote workers, you are absolutely going to end up with a culture by chance, right? It's just going to be whatever it is. And that culture is not going to be pretty. It's going to be mediocre at best. And we know that if you create a mediocre workplace culture for your remote workers, they're going to disengage. They're going to check out. They're going to be less productive. And more importantly, in an environment where there are millions of job openings, it might also cause those employees to jump ship. Okay. And so again, it's critical that you're deliberate about the environment that you ask your remote workers to work in, because we know that if you create an environment that meets their needs, and that if your remote workers are paid relative or better than the local market salaries, they're not going anywhere. They tell us this in droves. And then finally, before we get to the Q&A, I just want to leave you with this. You are leaving here today with a strategy to engage your remote workers, right? It's something that you can go back and share with your organization, or it's something that you can simply execute on your team or in your business unit or division, okay? It can work both ways. But what I believe is that because you have that strategy, you honestly have every single thing that you have inside of you that you need to succeed in this space, okay? So I don't want you to ever forget that you have the power to do this. You always did. You just need to go back to your organization and approach this strategically and execute. And so with that, Courtney, I would love to see if there are any questions, comments, issues that people have.
Yeah,
And I
we have a question in the chat. So it's from
Okay.
Julie. And she posted this during the communication portion of what you were saying. She wanted to know, is this feasible with 150 plus remote employees?
Oh, absolutely. All of these ideas are feasible with hundreds of thousands of employees. And so these are best in class ideas that we know work. They've been tried and tested in the past 2 years. So it doesn't matter if you have 10 employees in your organization or if you have 300,000. These ideas work because people are wired similarly and people are looking for the same things.
All right. That is the only question that we have in the chat.
Okay, perfect. And so another thing that I'd like to offer is if any of you after the fact have questions, comments, concerns, if you've got something going on in your organization that is personal that you didn't want to share with everyone, or, like just a boulder or something that's like really a sticking point, you don't know how to work your way through it or around it, please feel free to reach out to me. Just send me an email, pick up the phone and call me. I would be more than happy to talk to you and help you work through your issue, because I want all of you to succeed. And I also want all of you to know that employee engagement is not rocket science. Bottom line, if you create a work environment that meets people's needs, they will be engaged. And again, you're walking away with 21 ideas today that we know meet people's needs. And so now it's just about you sharing that with the people in your organization and executing.
Awesome. So she's got a follow-up comment after you answered. It says her experience with her workplace has been that people do not talk within large groups when they're in a remote meeting. Like everybody clams up and they don't talk. So any suggestions?
You could reward people who speak up. Now, again, I know that's not what we want, right? We want just to speak up anyway. And you can also say to people, like, you guys, we know that sometimes it can be difficult to speak up. We understand that. But unless we hear from you, unless you speak up, we won't know how to move forward. We won't know what to improve. We're here, whatever the topic is that you're talking about in those remote meetings, we want this to succeed. We want this to be the best version that it can be. But the only way we're going to get there is if we get your feedback, because you're in the trenches, you're closest to the customer, you see things that we do not. And that information is so incredibly valuable. And so we're encouraging you, right, to speak up in the moment. You could also create an email box and say, but if you're not comfortable speaking up in the moment, here's the email address of a place where you can send your opinion on this. Because, a company is only as good as the employees that it keeps. And so really let people know that you value their ideas, you value their thoughts, that the only way your company is going to be the best version of itself is if you hear from them, because you're all in this together as a team, right? And so when you start talking like that, I think it will encourage people to speak up. You can also give rewards out for people who ask questions, or for people who answer questions. And again, in a perfect world, we wouldn't be doing that. But you will find that as your culture matures and as your culture gets better, more people are going to speak up. Okay. So right now, you're just going to have to help people along. And whether that be that they can speak up from afar into an email box, or they get rewarded for speaking up, but really just be open and honest. Say to people, our experience is that a lot of remote people don't speak up within large group meetings, but you guys, we need you to do that. We want to create a great workplace. We want this environment to be the best place you've ever been. We want you to feel heard. We want your voice, right? At least you're giving people an opening. You're giving them an invitation. And so those are the first steps toward getting people to be more open. Also, you want people to be more open? You need to be more open. So if you've got managers and leaders who are not open and genuine and real and honest, right? Then your employees aren't going to be that way. So your managers and leaders really set the tone, and they should be role modeling how you want your employees to be. So your managers and leaders need to speak up. Your managers and leaders need to chime in. Your managers and leaders, excuse me, need to create a safe space and invite people to share and reward them to share and give them lots of venues to share. So you've got to make the environment ripe.
Yeah, it's great advice. And as I'm listening to you just say that, it's like, it's not just in the virtual setting either. It's in the in-person setting in your workplace too. Like,
absolutely.
You can have meetings where people don't want to speak, or you can have interactions where managers don't set the tone for that by being forthcoming and open themselves. So,
exactly.
Both environments can benefit from many of the things that you've talked about today.
Perfect.
So, well, everyone, we are at the top of the hour. I want to thank Jill so much for being with us today. I think we all are about to have like our minds blown because that was a lot, but it's so good. It's like you just want more. So if you want more, you need to sign up for LCAM 2022 so you can see Jill present her keynote speech on Thursday morning. I know it's going to be fantastic, and I know the passion you have for this topic is going to come through loud and clear with a live audience. So we're so excited to meet you in Corpus Christi, and we hope that everybody on the call has signed up for LCAM and is coming to see you at that time. So if you have any questions on today's presentation, you can reach out to me here in the office or to Jill based on her slides. We hope you guys have a wonderful remainder of your June. Happy 4th of July in a couple of weeks, and we'll see you back here for July's presentation. Thanks so much, everybody.
Perfect. Thanks all. See you in Texas.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.